This is Rebuilders, the leaders we need for the decade ahead. We all know change is a constant. It's just how fast, intensely, and inequitably the change around us is accelerating. As we move into the decade ahead, economic, social, and health inequalities will have created an increasingly uneven and siloed America. These changes didn't start with the events of 2020. They've been accelerating for over a generation. And now, technology, media, and COVID are amplifiers dividing us in ways we've never seen before. Our leaders need to adapt. The future of our communities and our world depend on it. But the ways we thought about leadership in the past will not get us to where we want to go in the future. America is at an inflection point, and if the right leaders show up, we will emerge from the decade ahead stronger and a better nation for everyone. This is Rebuilders, the leaders we need for the decade ahead. Here's your host, Paul Shoemaker.
This is episode 7 or 8 of Rebuilders. We started off talking with a handful of the Rebuilder leaders in my book, and then we sort of pivoted. And now I want to bring one of those folks back, Felipe Moreno. And we're going to hear a lot more about him and what he's up to in Phoenix. Thank you for joining me today, Felipe.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
So, first question I ask everybody. In your role, when you look at the years ahead and how you're going to show up as a leader, what do you think are the 1 or 2 most important personal leadership attributes that are going to matter to you in the future?
Well, I mean, it's one that I think has always been important to me, and more now than ever. I think it's going to continue to be important to me, and I think that's humility.
Okay.
Being humble as a leader. We live in a time of great divide, as you know, and that's in everything from just how we view things. I mean, everything seems very polarized, more now than ever. The ability to have an open mind and not feel that we need to be right all the time and convince others to think like me or think like us is key as a leader. I think leaders don't force feed. They inspire through understanding what makes their employees tick, leveraging our differences into strengths, and ultimately trying to achieve a common goal. And even where we ultimately might not agree, having the humility to be okay with that, but still have that and maintain that mutual respect and focus on the things we need to get done. So I think just being humble and understanding that it's not about winning and losing, it's about solving problems, that it's not about us, that it's about something bigger than us, whether it's the service we provide, the business we're in, and really just having that open mind, that humble approach and just keeping humility.
That's about as good a definition of humility as I've ever heard. That's great. So the first place I met Mr. Moreno was a little over a year ago. We were at a meeting in the city of Phoenix, and I was across a table from him, listening to him talk about his work, and was just sort of riveted by the conversation. So tell us a little bit about what your role is at the city of Phoenix, Felipe.
All right. Well, I have the privilege of being the Deputy Public Works Director for the City of Phoenix Public Works Department. So I'm responsible for residential solid waste collection for over 400,000 residents and homes, 332 staff in my division. And basically what I do is it's really revolving around managing people and equipment and ultimately ensuring that we're providing a safe and excellent essential service to the residents of Phoenix. And so very proud of the work we do, very proud of the staff and the team that we have. You know, solid waste, I like to say we're the face of the community in a lot of ways. You know, police and fire, that's great, but you call them when you need them. And hopefully you don't have to call them too often. But my men and women out there are out there in the community every week, every day, providing an essential service and representing us in a way that makes me feel very proud.
The first time that I do these broadcasts, when we're doing a live recording, it's sort of hard for me to listen for some of the nuance. So when I go back and listen to these to do editing, it's just amazing how much I hear. Felipe is a great example of that. I thought the notion that the face of the community was the garbage trucks. This is an interesting way to think about his business. And it's a great example of looking for and finding leadership in unexpected places. So he is the first rebuilder we've talked to on this podcast who exemplifies what I call data conviction. That to me is one of those 5 most vital traits. So listen for his conviction about data, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it more. You are literally the face of the city once a week to every resident, aren't you?
Yeah. It's I never thought garbage would be such a passionate thing, but our public really rallies around the service that my people provide. And I'm really, it does bring a sense of joy and pride into what we do.
Yep. So I don't mean this at all flippantly. You just express it. You are genuinely passionate about solid waste. When we met that day, you also were somebody that had to me a real deep sense of how data helps run your operation. It seems so core to what you want to achieve. So is the perception of how data affects your role and your team in solid waste in Phoenix, is that an accurate perception?
Yes. Solid waste collection is very much a logistics business. It's all about,
right.
And math problems sometimes. It's about, there's so much customer demand, so many tons of refuse or recycling or green waste that needs to be collected every day and taken to our sister divisions for post-collection. And it's quite the puzzle every day. And every day is different. And so data is really important in helping us manage that puzzle and manage those logistics, looking at our customer demand or tonnage, miles driven, to ensure that we are really looking at how to do it in the most safe, efficient manner every day in ever-changing conditions. So it's key, it's critical for us.
So before we started recording, you told me a quick anecdote about how the last year of COVID has affected sort of your intake as an organization. Your business has gone up, if you will.
Yes, business has gone up, resources have stayed the same.
Okay.
So that logistics and math problem we talk about has become more important to solve. I am very fortunate to have an amazing group and team that I work with that are able to really synthesize that data, crunch the numbers, because I am not a data expert. I am passionate about data and what it does for us and the need to use it as a leader.
Yeah.
I am not the number cruncher or the brains behind the operation by any means. I have some great people who do that.
Yep.
However, they're able to give me that information very quickly, which allows us to be very nimble and adapt to the changing conditions in Phoenix. And that has been essential in helping us to maintain the level of service without missing a beat in the time of COVID, when residential tonnage has gone up upwards of 30%, our bulky waste program upwards of 15%. So it's really a testament to the information that my team is able to provide daily and accurately, and then also translate that into the field. And then ultimately, the rock stars that are our drivers and the foremen and all the people, the boots on the ground, providing that essential service and finding ways to help them, support them to do their job efficiently. It's a group effort, and data is kind of the blood that gives us the pumps through the muscles out there to get the front lines working.
Yeah. And again, I don't mean this at all flippantly, just the notion of solid waste as a science is really fascinating to me. So I call leaders like Felipe that feel the way he does about data. They are people that possess data conviction. And to me, it's so vital in the decade ahead, especially as you reference this. Facts seem harder to get us to all sort of agree on these days. So you've sort of touched on it, but I want to just ask it in a broader way. What role does data and how you use it play in your leadership beliefs and your approach to leading your team?
Well, yeah, I think data is really about the story. Data can tell you where we've been. Historical data, obviously, tells us where we've been. So before my time, I can kind of learn what was around, how things were done, what the operation looked like prior to me taking on this role. It's obviously an indicator of where we are and how we do the day-to-day, which I just explained. And it's also given us a good indication of where we're headed if we listen to the data and if we keep track of the data and if we have integrity with how we collect the data. And so data is critical because it takes the subjectivity out of things and it really focuses on what is and our why. And so this allows me as a leader to provide a sound business case for the decisions that I make to balance that triple bottom line of doing what's good for our customers, making sure we are cognizant of the environment we work in, and ensuring that we are good stewards of the public money and how we provide that service. And so that's very critical because we are public servants at the end of the day. We have customers that pay a fee to get a service, and we have to make sure that we are being good stewards of that. So we're not continuously having to raise rates, and we're able to provide a service that's cost effective that our families can afford and can enjoy out there in the community.
I took some notes there. I just want to read them back to you. Data is a logistics and a math problem. It's a puzzle. I'm passionate about data and how to use it as a leader. We have to adapt and be nimble. My people are rock stars. He says that more than once. Data is the blood. Data is the story. Triple bottom line. If you didn't know better, you would think you're listening to a leader of a tech company, or what you would hope or wish a leader of a tech company would say. He just reinforces again how we need to look for leadership in places we didn't before, and we need to have our ears and our eyes open for where that leadership shows up in unexpected places. So sort of a two-part follow-up question. That all makes a lot of sense. How does that data affect how you sort of day-to-day lead people on your team? And sort of part two, where you can answer it as part of the same question, how do you make sure the data doesn't sort of become too sterile, too impersonal when you're using it as a leadership tool?
Right. So, data in sterile is a great word because data on its own is just spreadsheets and numbers. And it could look very obnoxious and very intimidating and things that people just want to ignore and gloss over. And to be honest, again, that's not my strength. I am not that person. What I am able to do, what my strength is in this, is taking all of that in, figuring out the narrative and transforming it into a story that the audience that I'm interfacing with can understand and relate to. So my role as a leader in how I use data, it's really about telling the story. It's about understanding it enough to be dangerous, understanding what it's telling us from the experts that are my team, and then transforming that into the narrative. And that narrative might be talking to the public about why we need to change a day of collection, or why we need to, change a service around, all the way up to working at a city council meeting and helping them understand why we need to add a resource or why we need to change a program. So the audience is always different, and you might have the same data set, but transforming that into the story to tell to the various stakeholders, whether it's the public that we're beholden to, the elected officials, or even other people within my division, to help them understand why we do what we do. I think it's always important to understand our why, and helping our drivers and our foremen and our frontline managers understanding why the decisions are being made. And if you can really show them the data and in a way that resonates with them, in a story that they can relate to, it makes all the difference in gaining buy-in and having that trust in me as a leader that we're going in the right direction.
Yep. I love your theme as data as a story. That's so powerful. So you've referenced a couple of times, Felipe, you're not a numbers data guy. So you had I would assume, a sort of a different kind of background for ending up in a leadership role like you are. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got where you are, and also how, coming from sort of an unconventional place, do you think that benefits you in your current leadership role?
Yeah, so my background is actually social work. So I did my undergrad in family and consumer resources at the University of Arizona. Then I got my master's in social work, and I was going to be a counselor. I did counseling out of grad school for a while, working with youth and families. And then I looked at the city of Phoenix, and there was an opportunity in the Human Services Department's Head Start program, which is 4-year-olds and teachers and their families. So I came in as a mental health therapist there, working to help support kids with learning issues in the classroom and helping them work better with their teachers, the families. And that was great and very rewarding. And all I knew was social work. And actually, it was a mentor of mine who was the deputy director at the time. She's now an assistant city manager in Avondale in Arizona here. She really pushed me to apply for the city's management intern program, which is a national program. I was like, I don't know why, I'm a social worker. And she saw something else in me. And that was
that's cool.
Important, is seeing things in people that they don't always see in themselves. And so I applied. I was successful in getting that internship. And it just opened my eyes to local government, public administration. And so at the end of that year, it was time to kind of figure out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And falling in love with government and just falling in love with the idea of being a leader, I wanted to go somewhere that was very foreign to what I already knew, which was, social work, the soft skills. And so I thought, an operating department would be a great place to go round out my skills and stretch myself and challenge myself and be uncomfortable in a good way. And so Public Works was gracious enough to offer me a position. I worked my way up as an admin assistant up to where I am now, Deputy Public Works Director. And it's been a great journey. And, honestly, social work has served me very well because it's allowed me to understand people, understand how to navigate in different environments, and really just have empathy and compassion in what we do, while still being able to provide sound leadership. And again, that inspiration that people need, especially in times like this.
That's fantastic. I love that story. On the day when we met, I remember you referenced a person on your team, someone that works on a garbage truck that was starting into a new leadership program. Could you just remind me of that story about her and that program that she went into? We can all lead from where we are. I didn't write about that in the book. I wish I had. It's such a strong idea. And it says to all of us, start from where you are. You don't have to end up there, but start. Lead. The last thing I'll say about Felipe and the way he thinks about leadership and his work, one of the main themes of the book is about divisions and silos. And we all know how much America suffers from that right now. More leaders like Felipe and the way he thinks could have such a huge effect on that dynamic.
So we have an apprenticeship program, and it's really about trying to, let me back up. The CDL industry is very hot right now. It's very competitive, commercial driver's licenses. So to attract people into this industry that are experienced, where we're competing with long haul truckers who are trying to, deliver crucial services all over the place. We're competing with the other solid waste industry. And so we created our own apprenticeship program, which is the first of its kind in the country for solid waste equipment operators. And we were really reaching out to, youth, our veterans and women, because, as you know, or can imagine, solid waste is really a male dominated field. And so we've done a lot to really reach out to women to help them understand this is for you too. You can make a career here. And so we've had several women come through the program, and in doing that, they've also just started blossoming and working into wanting to be in leadership roles, looking at how they can develop others. So it's been a great ride with the apprenticeship program. We've also had some of our women frontline managers. So I have one, I think this was a story I told you, where she was on a truck for a lot of years. She's now kind of worked into our frontline management, but she's now going through our emerging leaders program. She's really looking at how does she break that from a field worker to I want to be a leader in a bigger scale, and just watching her blossom and develop and continuously working to just help grow the people around us. That's really the passion I have for the industry we're in, is watching others kind of achieve. And again, seeing in others what maybe they didn't see in themselves early on, just like that person who mentored me.
It's on you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So what was the young woman's first name?
Oh, well, we have Christy Ortiz, who has kind of worked their way up from the garbage truck, but then we've had several women in our apprentice program that are just really, growing, and they're going to be our next generation leaders sitting in this chair at some point in time.
Absolutely. That's so cool. To me, I think one of the other individuals that's in the book, he has a concept, he calls it organizationless leaders. It's sort of around the idea we need to build new leaders in sort of less expected places and organizations and in cities. To me, having people like your team go through a leadership program like that, literally, not just figuratively, you have more leaders on the street. And that ultimately should make your work in the city of Phoenix stronger. Is that just hyperbole, or do you buy that?
No, I totally buy that, because I think at the end of the day, I think it's helping people understand we can all lead from where we are. So you may be on the garbage truck, but you can be a leader from that seat in the garbage truck, and how you go about your business every day, the example you provide with your peers. Because again, you're the face. I'm not the face. I'm not out there. They're not waving to me. The little kids aren't waving to me, putting signs up for me when I pass by in my car. But when they're in that garbage truck, they're rock stars to the community. And so to me, that's a leadership, and not just how they handle their business as an example for their peers, but who they represent to the public. And so, it's actually really interesting. This latest apprentice class, one of our apprentices grew up being that little kid waving to the garbage truck driver. And he's had a passion for garbage trucks since that time. Now he's an apprentice going to be working in the ranks with them. And so I always impress on everybody, no matter where you are, lead from where you are. It's not about the title. It's about what you have inside, and it's about what you demonstrate to those around you.
Lead from where you are. I love that. That's a really powerful concept. Just a couple more questions. If you were talking to a young 20-something leader today, or a 20-something version of yourself just out of, undergraduate and graduate school about leadership, what's a couple pieces of advice either you wish you'd have known back then or that you would share with someone today?
Yeah, it really goes back to just being humble and always being a student of the game. Because once you feel like you've arrived as a leader and you have nothing left to learn from somebody, or no one has anything left to teach you, that's when you become stagnant and complacent and out of touch. So we're never done as leaders. So it's really important to humble ourselves, to make sure that we understand who we are, what we represent. And at the end of the day, understand it's not about us. When you're a leader, you might be in the spotlight. We're talking right now, but this is really not about me. It's about those who have done a great job around me. And I'm just kind of the mouthpiece for their work and for all the good work that my peers and my staff have done, because without them, I'm not here right now. And so it's just about that humility, about being gracious and grateful for the people that work hand in hand with you, and just understanding to always be a student of the game. You always have something to learn. Everybody has something to teach you, whether it's something you want to emulate or something you want to make sure you never do. If you're visual and you're kind of, looking at what's around you all the time and being a student of that game, you're going to find everyone has a lesson to teach you one way or the other.
You exude authenticity when you talk about that, sir. And listeners, by the way, can't see this, but right behind Felipe on the wall in his room is a sign that says, "Stay hungry, stay humble." So I think the guy means it. Last question. We have a decade ahead that no matter sort of where you sit in a company or in a community or in a city, the challenges are pretty significant. From where you sit, you feel hopeful, you feel pessimistic, optimistic, and why do you feel the way you do about the future?
I mean, I guess it depends on the day you ask me, but I guess more days than not, I want to say yes, I feel very hopeful, because I do see a lot of great talent around me. Like I said, the up and comers, the leaders that I work with, the staff that I have, to watch how they do their business, to watch, how engaged they are, that inspires me. There's a lot of great talent in our city coming up, and even my contemporaries right now. And obviously there's great talent above me in the city. So I see a lot of that around me. So it gives me hope. But I think it's incumbent on the current leaders to tap into that talent and work to develop those around us into great leaders for tomorrow. So the hope is there, but we have a lot of work to do in leadership. Our current, I always say that it's kind of our responsibility to throw the rope over for the next person. So if we're not doing that, then all that talent is not going to get tapped into. So it's important to know that it's there, but it's on us to throw that rope over, develop those leaders. I feel like one of the biggest responsibilities of a leader is to develop other leaders. It's not just to, I've arrived, good luck for everybody else. And remember that none of us got where we are alone. There was always somebody. I mean, we've all worked hard. We've all, probably self-made and done those things, but there's always been people and key points in our lives, either kind of really out there or even behind the curtain, that have helped us get to where we are. And we can't forget that. And we got to make sure we're throwing the rope over for the next generation and helping them grow and develop so that, we're in a better place than we found it at the end of the day.
I love it. That makes me more optimistic. Of anything you said, I think the phrase I may take away from this the most is lead from where you are. Really simple idea, but really powerful. And when I think about my own experiences in the last 11 months living through this pandemic, I had 3 times where I had to go get a COVID test. And the gentleman in line sort of organizing the cars to come in, all 3 times that person was sort of an optimistic, upbeat, face of the work. And he just changed the experience for me. That was leadership from where he was, right? And he changed my experience as a citizen of what I was going to go through.
Yeah. And again, we don't always know how we impact other people, but just in our attitude, just in how we do what we do, whether it's in public or how we just go about our day, you're leading and you're either giving a good example or a bad example. And you can, just like that person, change your perspective. We have the ability to really impact those around us. We may never see the fruits of those labors, but we got to know they're there and always hold ourselves accountable for how we conduct our business and carry ourselves.
Absolutely. So great to reconnect with you, Felipe. I appreciate your time so much. Good luck coming out of the pandemic. And it's been great talking to you today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Rebuilders Podcast. For more information, resources, and episodes, visit paulshoemaker.org. That's paulshoemaker.org.